Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultras Talk channel. Thank you so much for being here today. A bit of a news report. We don't typically do these things, but now it's not confirmed, but I think it's been confirmed that there is a chance that Mauricio Pochettino, some may say heavily inclined to being appointed as the new USMNT manager. It's the hot topic of the hour. In the past few weeks, we saw it was changing in daily who would be the new manager, but now it seems to be a little bit more concrete that there is interest. And this is a big name that I think everyone can kind of agree upon that it's a good guy to lead us. Braden, I'm really interested to see your initial thoughts when you saw in the news that first tweet came out and then it started piling up. What were your initial thoughts on Mauricio Pochettino? He says Pochettino, but it's Pochettino to be the manager.
Well, I just want to give a little bit of context first as to when we're recording this. This is a couple hours after the first initial tweet came out. I just want to preface this by saying that this video could very well be coming out after an official announcement is made. There's been some rumors that an announcement could be coming as soon as, I guess, the day that we're releasing this. It might be, it might not. We have no idea at this time, but there's been rumors at least that he has agreed, and there could be an announcement tomorrow or today, whatever, as we're gonna upload this. So it's not officially confirmed as we're recording this. It might be when we upload it, but that's just kind of the assumption we're going off of right now. As for initial thoughts, I think it's kind of a huge W for the Federation, because he was also one of the main candidates for the England job. And I know we're not official rivals with England, but I think there's always going to be a rivalry there in terms of just generic history, as well as, of course, with the on the soccer front. I mean, we've never lost to them in an international tournament. Of course, going back to playing them in the 2022 World Cup, and I think there's always a bit of a rivalry between Americans and the English. So if we do get him over England, I think that's a pretty significant coup. It's showing off Matt Crocker's connections, basically, because I think one of the main reasons if this deal does get done is because that they work together at Southampton, and I think that's a huge part of this. And the other thing is, I think a lot of people have been downplaying it a little bit, but it is an attractive job. The reality is that there's a lot of positives. It's a young squad with unfulfilled potential, and that's something that Pochettino really likes taking over. There is the talent there to make an underdog run, kind of like we'll talk about what he made with Spurs in the Champions League. We host the World Cup, of course. We're going to be on the biggest stage, and it's only a 2-year job if he wants to. If he wants to stay another cycle, by all means, you can have the job. That's fine. But if he wants to transition back to club or go somewhere else, he only has to stay here for a couple of years. So initial thoughts are, I'm honestly surprised that USSF are even making this big of a hire. But I mean, if it did go through, it's a huge win in my books.
I'll be honest, my initial thoughts were no way, impossible. There's no way that this is happening. I mean, we know that we're going to be pointing out, just to give you guys a brief schedule right here on what this video will look like. We'll be talking about his biggest accolades / accomplishments. We know there aren't that many trophies to point out, but we will be talking about the most relevant things he accomplished in his career. And then also the positives, negatives that he may bring to the program, and then our final take. But my initial thoughts were there's no way this is true. It seems to picking up some steam, so I think that there is a heavy indication that that if it is at least being negotiated. So props to the Federation for reaching out to him. I think that the way that he plays is really nice. Also a young manager and has managed some big names in the past. I think definitely a huge improvement from the other names that were being speculated. So that's the biggest positive for me initially. Now moving on to the biggest things that he has done. I think everybody knows him from his time at Spurs, but he was a good manager even before that. And also as a player, he played under some really good managers as well. So Braden, if you want to point that out, your thoughts on what he has done, what his career looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have watched our similar videos talking about some of the other candidates, Gareth Southgate was one of them, Patrick Vieira was another. I'm just going to run through his managerial career and what he's done, basically. He went into Espanyol. You see the scarf behind me. He was a player there. That's where he ended his career. And he came in as a manager, very inexperienced, when they were 18th in the league in a relegation battle. And in the same season, despite coming in January, got them all the way up to 10th. After that, it was kind of just more mid-table mediocrity, but stability, which was good for when he came in. They were not stable. They were threatened to go down. So I think he did a pretty solid job there. up until his final season where he ended up leaving when they were in a relegation battle again. He moves to Southampton, which is interesting because the 2 seasons before him, they had back-to-back promotions, all the way from League One, finishing second, getting promoted to the Championship, kind of like what Ipswich Town have done the past couple of seasons, getting promoted back-to-back. He comes in halfway through their first season back in the Premier League. They were in 15th, in danger of getting relegated. Once again, he comes in, steadies the ship, gets them to a solid 14th finish. Not much in improvement of the positions, of course, but he, again, provided stability for the club. And then the next season after that really pushed on 8th place. And that was actually his only full season at the club, but a huge improvement. And I think a lot of the young talents that he brought in as well, I'll speak about that a little bit later in the video, but that's another huge thing for me that he did at Southampton. Then, of course, where he's all known best, he goes to Tottenham Hotspur, who were kind of just meh before him. They finished 6th. He comes in, they finish 5th, and immediately he takes them to a Carabao Cup final. Yes, he loses a final. It's going to become a bit of a theme in his career, losing finals, but I think the fact that he got them there in his first season is nothing to laugh at. And then, of course, the next season, again, a huge collapse at the end of the year. But I think overall the season, a huge positive. They did finish 3rd in a 2-horse race, the famous St. Totteringham's Day. But up to that point, they were in a title race. And I think you could say for a club as prestigious or lack thereof of Tottenham, that wasn't really precedented. And then the next season, similar thing. They finished 2nd, their best ever season in the league, I believe. And then that season, they make the FA Cup semifinal, a good cup run. And then they do the same thing the next year, finishing 3rd in the league. Lots of stability. And then, of course, 2018-19, the huge season. They finished 4th in the league. But the real story, the Champions League run to the finals. I think it's interesting to point out that in the group stage, they only made it out based on head-to-head away goals. They were tied on points, tied on goal difference, tied on everything with Inter Milan, but because they scored 1 goal against Milan in the away game, they went through. And then they beat Dortmund 4-0 very handily in the round of 16. Had the famous game against Man City where they scored Fernando Llorente scoring in, I think, 73rd minute, getting them through on away goals. Another famous tie against Ajax in the semifinals, Lucas Moura getting the hat trick, including the 96th minute winner that sent them to the final. And then in the final, yeah, they lost 2-0 to Liverpool. But I will say in that game, they dominated possession. They had more shots on target. I think they were very unlucky to give away a penalty very early in the game that kind of killed any chance that they would have had. I think they still fought admirably. And at the end of the day, getting Tottenham to a Champions League final would have been unheard of before Pochettino. So I think it's still, there's going to be some asterisks there, but I think it's a huge accomplishment. Then at PSG, a bit of some concerns. He comes in January of 2020, 2021. They were 3rd in the league when he came in. Slight improvement there, but they ended up losing out, finishing 2nd. They did win 2 trophies, 2 domestic ones, which is basically the only spot that he's won trophies with PSG. A bit of maybe a concern there, but I mean, we're the USMNT. We don't win trophies anyway. Makes the Champions League semifinals as well in his first season with PSG, which I think is pretty impressive to do, especially coming in mid-season when the group stage was already done. And then his only season, like full season there, he wins the league. I mean, it's the French league. What do you expect? But he got the bare minimum done, and then lost to Real Madrid, the eventual winners in the Champions League. A little bit of a disappointment given the squad he had, but still, I think there is still a very positive run at PSG, despite what some people may say. And then at Chelsea, I think we can all see, I mean, if you watched our Premier League predictions video, we were all excited about Pochettino towards the end of last season with Chelsea, what he was building. The decision to sack him was atrocious, and again, we'll get into that later, but he made them a Carabao Cup finalists, got them to another final, which is something that was unheard of for them in the season prior, finishing 12th. I think overall, every club that he's been at, he has improved. So I think that's my biggest takeaway in terms of his biggest accomplishment.
I think, yeah, I was going to touch on the point that about him losing the finals. Listen, we're not going to get to any finals anyway, so I'm not going to say that this is the best hire possible, but in terms of his accomplishments, I think for the good that he has done developing players, setting up a good project, you have to say he's a builder. Even the Chelsea squad that was looking like a mess, I think that might be one of his best accomplishments. He got them to play cohesively, but I think even at the time of Southampton, The scouting was amazing. Obviously, he's not going to sign anyone for us, but he can spot talent. He can spot talent, and he can build upon what he's been given, even at circumstances where he doesn't really have a transfer window, which was even the tone when he was at Espanyol. Getting halfway through, this is a halfway through job. I mean, this is honestly the most urgent job that he probably got, where it's a big circumstance, but you can't sign anyone. You have to make do with what you have. And I think that he has shown for this type of job, it kind of fits well. He has done well. I think the finals have probably been the thing that you can pinpoint as a failure in his career, and maybe some big decisions that didn't go their way because of how he set up tactically or even player selection. But at the end of the day, we're not getting to any finals. If he gets us to a final and messes up there and we lose because of him, I don't even care. I'll still be happy, because realistically, I don't think we are touching a final anyway. So I think that the biggest accomplishment in my eyes is just how he builds squads. He's a builder. He's not a guy like Pep, for example, that will sign everyone. Daniel Levy, a very, very conservative guy when it comes to spending, and he still managed to do well with what he was given. So I think those are probably the jobs that I'll look at and say these accomplishments at least back up the claim that he's a guy that could do well with the squad that we have. Now, moving on to the biggest positives, we've talked about his accolades, but in terms of playing tactically, I'll just say right now, the 4-2-3-1, we might finally see that happening. What do you think are the biggest positives, and if so, any negatives that you think he brings on if he was to be appointed, Braden?
Well, I'm going to touch on something as the main positive that I think you also just said, and it's the development of young players. I think this is something that Pochettino is probably most well known for as his biggest success as a manager. He himself said it when he was in England. He felt like it was his duty to develop English talent because it was a way to say thank you for them putting the trust in him. And I mean, we'll see many of his young stars that he developed went on to play for England and have illustrious careers. Luke Shaw, he gave him his first chance at Southampton. We all know what he's gone on to do with Man United and England, of course, scoring in that Euros final. Adam Lallana, he gave him his first trust in the Premier League, and he became a very established player there with Liverpool, most notably. James Ward-Prowse, another one that he gave him his first chance at Southampton. And of course at Spurs, Harry Kane, trusting him in his really first season at Tottenham, giving him the starter spot. And I mean, he hit the ground running. We all know what Harry Kane has done since then. One of the best strikers of our generation. Eric Dyer's another one who he gave his first chance at Spurs. Same for Dele Alli the next season. And we saw what Dele Alli did. I think 2-time Young Player of the Season in the Premier League. Kyle Walker, he took his form to a whole new level. Very excited to see what he can do with Serginho Dest and Jedi Robinson, because he did the same thing for another fullback at PSG, Nuno Mendes, who was 19 years old coming in from there, a huge step up from Sporting, and I think he turned him into one of the best left backs in the world. Cole Palmer's the huge one. This is the one that I really want US fans to take away from. He gave him the reins at Chelsea after the move from Man City, gave him the freedom at the 10 to basically do whatever he wanted, and I mean, we all know what Cole Palmer did. What a season for him at Chelsea. Was probably their saving grace. Without him, they finished so much lower in the table. And that's the big thing. You mentioned the 4-2-3-1. That's what he played at Chelsea, and that's what he's played for most of his managerial career. Obviously, I mean, you adapt. That's what good managers do. But for the most part, he's played a 4-2-3-1, and I think that's the perfect fit for our players. It's the formation that we've played the best with recently. When we had our interim managers, BJ Callahan and Anthony Hudson, we played with the 4-2-3-1. And in particular, the thing that I'm most excited for if Pochettino is hired is the number 10 position, because I mentioned Dele Alli, I mentioned Cole Palmer. Those players have had such incredible careers under Pochettino, and we all know we have Gio Reyna, we have Malik Tillman. Honestly, I think it could be a little bit closer than some people might think. I think that there's a possibility that Pochettino might prefer Malik Tillman at the 10 to Gio Reyna, but regardless of which one he picks, I have the utmost confidence that they'll have a huge World Cup in 2026. They're going to be probably our best player outside of course, Pulisic. So that's the one thing that I think I'm most excited about. That's the biggest positive for me, the way he plays. The only negative, I think, is kind of some baffling decisions in finals, and he didn't really do too much with the big names at PSG, but again, that has really nothing to do with the situation he's in here. So ultimately, I think all of his biggest negatives would be valid concerns if he were to take over the England job, but maybe not necessarily here with us.
Yeah, I think the positives everybody knows. I don't want to be the most pessimistic guy right here, but obviously I'm happy. If he gets assigned like it seems like it will be, I'll be happy. I'll be the happiest guy, especially considering the other guys that were being surrounded with the job. But just focusing on the negatives after you, I think you've done a great job at highlighting the positives. The finals, as we said, it won't really matter. We won't get to finals, but I think that one thing, especially on that final, Tottenham against Liverpool, where he got to thanks to a miraculous hat trick by Lucas, he didn't really talk to Lucas about leaving him out until 15 minutes before the match, and Lucas was very adamant on how that upset him because Harry Kane was coming back from injury, had 0 minutes in the past 2 weeks, and he still got the nod over him. That's a big decision. I think that's a tactical decision ultimately. He went with the biggest player that he had, but I think that man management wasn't necessarily the best. And at his time with PSG, Marquinhos and Neymar, obviously Neymar is not the most professional guy. They had a good relationship, but they both said that he wasn't big enough to deal with the big personalities. Now, this wouldn't be an issue because we don't have any big personalities. However, I think that he doesn't really quite have that strong grip like a guy like Mourinho would have with the squad that we have. So, would he really point out and make our guys feel out of their comfort zone? I'm not so sure, but I think just because of the level that he brings in terms of knowledge and how smart he can be as a tactician, I think that would be enough. But if I had to say some negatives, I think the man management and the size and that meanness to him, I don't think he really has that. I don't think there are any concerns with the language. In the past, it was funny. He didn't give any interviews in English, and then one day he decided to give them, and it was fluent. So I think that there won't be any concerns. I saw some people talking about that, but no, the guy's been experienced enough. He was coaching in England for quite a while. So this brings us to our final take. What do you think, Braden? If he was to be appointed, let's just give a wild shot as well. And I ask all of the guys that are watching too, what is the ceiling? Does he raise our ceiling? Do you think he could take us to a semifinal? This sounds crazy even saying it. And your final take, do you think that we should ultimately wait? Obviously, if we have the chance, we're going to jump onto it and sign him. But do you think he's the best readily available option? Or do you think like a Joachim Lau or Rafa Benitez, if they were to be available, all three of them are lined up, do you think he's still the best?
That's a tough question to end it off. I think he is the best option. I'm gonna be optimistic here and say that I think he is the best available option. Also, slightly because there hasn't even seemed to be any contact with Yogi Low in any manner. I think that he's also one. They bring different things. I mean, Yogi Low has the international experience. He's an older manager. He brings the valuable experience that we need. Pochettino's a little bit younger, but and of course hasn't managed on the international stage before. But I think ultimately for the player pool we have, the kind of the squad that we have, I think Pochettino fits a little bit better. And one thing that I will say, you mentioned maybe in terms of man management, maybe his edge in terms of the more ruthlessness isn't there. I will say the reason that he mutually parted ways with Chelsea is because he didn't agree with and he wasn't willing to accept the new club structure that Chelsea had. And that's the reason they brought in Enzo Maresca, because he was willing to basically be a yes man for them and take over the new club structure regardless of what he thought about it. He's not going to take any nonsense from USSF. He's not going to hear Don Garber saying that Jordan Morris and Christian Roldan should be on the World Cup roster. He's not going to succumb to that. He's going to have his say fully with the team. And that's, I think, a huge thing, because if we had brought in someone like Steve Cherundolo, who there had been some rumors of in the past, or any other MLS guy, really, I just didn't have the confidence that maybe there could be a little bit of not nepotism, but insider influence from the federation that there probably shouldn't have been. I trust Pochettino fully in that aspect, so I'm going to be optimistic. I think that he is the best possible option, and assuming that he is over the line, it has been announced when we upload this video. I mean, again, who knows? But I think that he significantly raises our ceiling. I think we go from a team that basically is scared to have an early exit of the World Cup, because I think that's the mentality we have now. We had an embarrassing exit at home in Copa America. The goal, probably with a manager of a similar caliber to Greg, like a Cherundolo would be, or even someone like Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, I think the goal would just to be not get embarrassed. I think with Pochettino, or a manager of his caliber, he comes in and the goal immediately changes to make a real statement in this World Cup at home, make a deep run, whether it's quarterfinals, semifinals. Round of 16 is even still acceptable if you're losing to a good team, because with the new format, I mean, you don't know how it's going to be. That's still winning a knockout game in the round of 32. And if you come against England, France, Argentina in the round of 16, I mean, you can't really be expected to win those games realistically, as long as we give them a fight. But yeah, I think this is a huge hire. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's still the best option. Even though I try to point it out and play devil's advocate a little bit, I still think he's the best option, because also I think at this point, judging by his last jobs, he probably feels some hunger to prove something. And I think that's a good thing. And it's a time for him to make a statement, perhaps. So I think it would be similar to what he did at Tottenham. He took, I don't want to be too harsh on Tottenham, but a very relevant club in terms of stature, to new heights that they never reached before. Hopefully he does the same with the USMNT. I'll be positive and say that he's the best option. And I will say this, I'm really curious to what the fan base will say if we don't really perform, with people are saying that, oh, we're going to be amazing now. Are we going to put the blame on the players? We'll see. I think that Gio Reyna and other guys this season will be crucial, because they will have a chance to play at the 10. So stay tuned, because we will be bringing those season predictions for the USMNT squad. Let us know in the comments below. What do you think? Also, if he doesn't get signed, at least you can laugh at us for being deluded recording this video. But let us know in the comments below what you think. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.